Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Captain's Table. I am your host, Captain B-Nard, and topic of discussion today is going to be the BHDL3, a complete review of and reaction to the entire season. If you guys have been following the channel the past couple of months, you will know that the BHDL Season 3 has just recently come to an end, and you will also know that we actually did quite well this season. As you can see by the beautiful low quality thumbnail there, we did end the season with an 8-3 record. That is one of the best records we've ever had in a draft league, and that was good enough to land us as a semifinalist, actually finishing technically in third place once again behind the individual who actually won the whole thing, Anastasia. So big congratulations to her for becoming the season 3 champion slash Pokemon Scarleton. But aside from that, we did do quite well this season, as I said. Um, Quite the turnaround, obviously, from last season, which was really my goal this season. I really wanted to get back to the success that I had experienced in the BHDL 1, to rebound from the abysmal performance that I had in the BHDL 2. So, overall, very happy with this season, very proud of what we were able to accomplish here. And having said all of that, we are going to go ahead and take a little bit of a closer look at some of the statistics coming out of this season. And so here I have a complete list of all of my Pokemon stats from this season of Draft League. Now, this is one of the only times, actually, I believe the second time that I've ever entered a Draft League that I actually did not make a single change to my entire team the entire season. Um, so there's no need for me to go through any of the, obviously changes that were made to the team throughout the season, because obviously there were no changes made to the team throughout the season. This right here is the complete list of how I did with all of my Pokemon this season. You will see obviously the name of the Pokemon that I drafted on the left hand side, and following it you will see three numbers. The first number is how many games that I brought that Pokemon to, not necessarily how many games they were technically used in, but how many games they were brought to. Um, Second number is going to be the amount of knockouts that Pokemon scored cumulatively throughout the entire season. And then the last number is going to be the amount of times that Pokemon was knocked out this season. From top to bottom, it kind of makes sense, but we're going to go over it. Of course, all the way at the top of the list, we have Sneasler and Goodra. Those were really my top two Pokemon this season as far as usage, as they came to all 11 games that I had this season. Um, and as you can see, of course, they both have positive KDRs. Of course, Sneasler with a massively positive KDR, one of the highest in the entire league this season, actually. Which makes sense because, of course, Sneasler was my number one draft pick. It was really kind of the anchor that the team was constructed around. Of course, usually when you're creating a team for draft league, your first Pokemon, typically you want to make it something that is a really heavy hitter, a powerhouse capable of really carrying the team, or being a sweeper, that kind of thing. And so Sneasler obviously checks all those boxes, and it did in fact perform pretty much how you would expect. But not far behind, actually, we have the Goodra, of course, the de facto team captain of the Philadelphia Pidgeys, the Pokemon that I draft in the number 2 spot in every single draft league that I joined. And this was actually the first season that Goodra ended up being a Terra captain for me, and it worked out quite well, as you can see, obviously, with those stats. It really came through for us and came up big for us quite a lot this season. Largely thanks to the ability to Terra, but even without Terra, Goodra is quite the powerhouse and a reliable Pokemon. But not far behind that, of course, we do have Scissor, another old favorite of mine, that came to 10 games and kind of broke even as far as KDR. And not far behind that, we have, of course, Ninetales Alolan form and Rotom Wash form, which both came to 9 games each. And they both had a little bit on the negative side differentials, but that's okay. They certainly did their job. For the most part, I would say those five Pokemon were pretty much the cornerstones, the heart and soul of this team this season for us. Those Pokemon came to virtually every game. Obviously, a few of them, not to every game, but those Pokemon came to most of our games. And then um, not quite in that category, but almost in that category, I would say. Obviously, next on the list is Mudsdale, the captain's trusty steed, as it were, a Pokemon that I've been very happy with and impressed with over the past couple of seasons that I've had it in Draft League. And so, obviously, you could see that came to 7 games. With a little bit of a positive KDR there as well. So it came to a little over half of our games did Mudsdale. So definitely made a big impact for us this season as well. And then, filtering down from that, of course, we have the Arcanine, which came to a handful of games this season, broke even KDR wise. That was, of course, my other Terra Captain this season. And I was. Mildly disappointed, I would say, with the lack of opportunity I had to bring Arcanine this season. I feel like every time I draft Arcanine, it's just kind of a point of it. It's circumstantially it's very good, especially if it's a Terra Captain, which I have made it a Terra Captain the last couple of times I drafted it. Um, but unfortunately, there aren't always the best of opportunities to use Arcanine. But overall, I was still relatively happy with the ability that I had to bring it and use it. Although I wish I could have made a little bit better use of it. It just kind of is what it is. And then, of course, rounding off the list at the bottom, we have the Mesprit and the Arboleva that only came to 2 games each. Didn't really make a ton of an impact, but kind of did what they were supposed to do in the games that they were brought to, specifically with Arboleva. Certainly did what it was supposed to do in the games that it came to. And then, of course, at the bottom, we have the Pincurchin that only came to 1 game this season, and, of course, broke even with the KDR as well. So, yeah, that kind of rounds off the team there. I will say, as far as the bottom Pokemon on the team here, certainly I had hoped that I would have had more of an opportunity to bring all of those Pokemon. Although I am happy that I was able to bring every single Pokemon that I drafted at least once to at least 1 game this season, which is not something I'm always able to do, but I am happy that I was able to do that this season with this team. I never really like drafting a Pokemon and not using it at all. That seems kind of pointless for the most part. So I am happy that I was able to find a place for all of these Pokemon to at least come to 1 game. But as I said, for some of them, I kind of wish that I would have had more of a chance to bring them to a few more games this season. But it just kind of is what it is. I think in Draft League, a lot of times what happens is you fall into your comfortable six, which are usually some of your top six draft picks, if not all your top six draft picks, and you usually fall into bringing them more often than not. And of course, this season was no exception for me, as I did bring my top six draft picks more often than not to the games, which does lead to a little bit of predictability, but at the same time, you can still use different sets and builds and that kind of thing with them. So, but in any event, that kind of rounds off the Pokemon numbers for this season. So, moving along, we are going to come to player awards. So this kind of goes hand in glove with what I was just talking about with Pokemon stats. So, of course, we are of course going to have to give the seasonal MVP this time around to Sneasler. I think Sneasler definitely overperformed this season, or performed about as I would have hoped it to. Like I said, did a lot of damage. It was pretty much the star player of the Philadelphia Pidgeys this season. Was able to get a few sweeps into a few different games there, but even in the games where it didn't sweep, where I didn't bring that build of it, it still did a lot of work with choice sets as well. So Sneasler did put in great work, and I think this is a no-brainer for us. I think it has to be the seasonal MVP for us this time around. It just, obviously, as I said in the previous slide, just pretty much lived up to everything that it was supposed to live up to, and obviously very happy about that. Definitely did its part carrying the team to the semifinals here in the BHDL3. But additionally, the other positive player award I have is going to be the Pokemon that excelled, and of course, I have to give that this time around to Gudra. So I think the biggest reason that Gudra excelled this season and exceeded my expectations, once again, I would have to say, is because I did make it a Terra Captain this season. So um, not only was it a Terra Captain, but it came to every single game this season as well. And so Gudra really got a chance to shine this season, unlike other seasons. I mean, not to say that it didn't shine in other seasons, because it has, but giving Gudra the ability to Terra this season really made it shine more so than it has in the past. And I certainly think that it definitely earned the title exceeding expectations this season for me. I will say that it was not without costs to other things, as I will discuss in a minute. But yeah, overall, very happy with that. Gudra is one of my favorite Pokemon of all time. I've used it, obviously, as I mentioned, drafted it in the number 2 slot in every draft league I've ever joined. And yeah, definitely happy about that. But on the flip side of the coin, we do have some negative player awards. First one is going to be for Pokemon that was kind of a disappointment this season, and I'm going to have to give that one reluctantly to Mesprit. Now, I did have to think a little bit about this one because pretty much all the Pokemon did close to what I thought they would do this season, give or take a little bit. So this was a difficult one to hand out, but I feel like Mesprit had to be, if there was one Pokemon on this team that didn't quite live up to the expectation I had for it, it would be Mesprit. And the main reason for that kind of goes hand in glove with something I started to say a second ago, which was how I placed my Terra Captains. So when I originally designed this team, and when I drafted Mesprit, I had very heavily considered making Mesprit one of my Terra Captains. I was kind of seeing it as almost like a mini Cresselia, is in terms of its typing, stats, move pool, that kind of thing. Even the same ability, obviously. And so I was very, very much considering making Mesprit a Terra Captain. Had I made it a Terra Captain, I think it certainly would have come to more games. I think it would have excelled quite a bit. Unfortunately, I didn't really have the room to make that a Terra Captain because, as I had stated, my Terra Captains were Gudra and Arcanine. Now, I wanted to have my two Terra Captains. I wanted to have one that hit on the physical side and one that hit on the special side, and so obviously Gudra and Arcanine fit that bill. Now I could have sacrificed one of them in order to make Mesprit a Terra Captain, although actually, now that I'm thinking about it with the points, I'd have to go back and double check what the point values were. But I might actually not have been able to make Arcanine and Mesprit Terra Captains next to each other. I just want to let me see here. Yeah, actually, so the point values wouldn't have added up to do that, so that's why I just wanted to refresh my memory. But yeah, the only way I could have made Mesprit a Terra Captain is if I would have sacrificed Arcanine, and then I would have had to use Gudra and Mesprit as my Terra Captains. And I didn't want to do that because having Terra Captain Arcanine just seemed like way too useful for me to not do it. And of course, I didn't want to have both my Terra Captains hitting on the special side, although technically you can make Mesprit either or, but I think you tend to see it more as a special attacker thanks to its move pool. But yeah, I am disappointed in that. It did have its shining moment though in one of the weeks early on in the season. Actually, I was able to bring it, and it did put in quite a lot of work in the one game. But only being able to bring it to 2 games, and then the second game it came to, it kind of got destroyed and was a huge liability. Unfortunately, it just didn't quite live up to what I had hoped for it. But like I said, I put part of the blame of that on myself because had I been able to make it a Terra Captain, I think it would have been a whole different ball game. But unfortunately, we just sometimes we make the decisions we make, and we live with the results. So, um, but yeah, that's that. And then, of course, lastly, we're going to have to name a seasonal LVP. And after very little thought process, I think the LVP this season has to go to Pincurchin. So, reason I say that is because Pincurchin only ended up coming to 1 game this season. Um, which was actually quite underwhelming. Even though this team was not designed around electric terrain and Pokemon that could benefit from it like my Season 1 team was, I still figured that there would be more chances, more opportunities for me to bring Pincurchin. But in practice, that did not kind of work out similarly with Mesprit, as there were just not really many matches that I could have even brought Pincurchin to, and then the cost of bringing it and what I would have had to not bring on the other side in order to bring it just kind of didn't make sense to me. So, but I really would have liked to use Pincurchin a little more this season to make use of the unburdened Sneasler with the terrain and all that stuff. Um, but yeah, just it didn't seem to have a good matchup into a lot of teams, and I think this is another situation of back in season one of the BHDL when I had Pincurchin and it came to basically every game and it put in so much work. Um, the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet as a game was a very different game back then than it is now, because back then we only had access to the original decks plus the Pokemon home transfers, so we didn't have access to any of the DLC Part 1 or 2 Pokemon in Season 1. And similarly with other Pokemon, I think with the addition of all the new Pokemon, some Pokemon that have been around in Scarlet and Violet since day one, like Pincurchin, really suffered as far as usability goes. And I think this season was a huge example of that. Now, to play devil's advocate, I could also say that I think that had I built the team a little more around Pincurchin being viable, I think it would have come to more games. But at the same time, I kind of didn't want to completely replicate what I did in season one with the electric terrain strategy on that team. You know, for this team, I didn't want to kind of just do the same thing again. Pincurchin was just kind of there as like a fail safe in case I wanted to have guaranteed terrain setting. That's kind of why our Bolova was there too, um, for terrain setting, although not as easy to control as Pincurchin is, obviously. Um, but at the end of the day, I think again, just kind of this one comes down to team design, and this team wasn't really designed to rely on Pincurchin like my season one team was. So at the end of the day, Pincurchin just didn't really, like I said, it only came to one game, didn't really do a whole lot. Although it did its job in the one game it came to, but other than that, just didn't really do much for us this season. So I think it has to be the LVP this time around. So moving along, that is going to bring us to my top three and bottom three games of this season. So as I had stated, I had a really good season, one of the most successful seasons the Pidgeys have ever had this season. And in the beginning of the season, we actually started 6-0 undefeated. We're actually in first place for several weeks there toward the middle of the season. And so personally, I think our best games kind of came toward the beginning of the season. So, my top three games in no particular order here from this season, I would say would have to be my week one game versus Anastasia. That was a really close, really competitive game. Felt like I could have played it a little better, but at the end of the day, it was a really great match. I think we ended up obviously getting the win 1-0 in that one. Um, but additionally, I will say another game that I think was one of our best this season was our Week 3 game versus the Best Not Really. That was a game in which we ended up winning 5-0, but it was another game that it was just an absolute war. One of the longest games we had this season. I think, in fact, our Week 1 and 3 games were, I believe, our longest games this season because they were just absolute wars. And even though we won that Week 3 game as a 5-0, I don't think that accurately reflects just how close that game was, because it was a really close, really competitive game. Just a great match all around. Um, and then the last one of my top three games for this season, I would say, would have had to been my Week 4 game versus Emerald Miner. Essentially, because that was just, again, it was a really hotly fought, hotly contested game. I think we ended up getting the win 2-0 in that one. But there was that game was really a masterclass in over predicting, I would say, on both sides. But we were able to come away with the victory. So just really solid, really hard fought game all around. But on the flip side of that coin, I will say our bottom three games this season, I would say, again, in no particular order, would have to be our week 7 game versus Scorpion. I think probably this was the game that I did the poorest this entire season, both from a prep standpoint and from a gameplay standpoint. I feel like I prepped for this game very poorly. I feel like I played this game very poorly. Excuse me. And the results speak for themselves as we lost this one, I believe 5-0. So yeah, it was a pretty bad game for us. Um, so yeah, that was just a really rough week. Um, but similarly, our following week's game in week 8 versus Biridu, I would say, was also another case of that. In that situation, I believe we lost 2-0 in that game. But that game is one of my bottom games this season because I feel like, and I had stated it multiple times at this point, but that game really just came down to one misplay on one turn that I made in that game, over predicting, and it cost me the entire game, and that just really didn't sit well with me because I really just screwed myself over in that game thanks to that one turn. So yeah, that was one of the low lights of the season for me as well. And then of course, the last one on that list of bottom three games this season, unfortunately, has to be my semifinals match once again versus Anastasia, which of course was the last game of the season where we got eliminated from the tournament. We lost this one 4-0. It wasn't a terrible game, but there were a lot of factors working against us in this game. So um, probably the biggest one is I would say, not to make excuses for myself because that's not what this is, but I was really trying to get over a sickness that I had and sinus infection, and I'm still not 100% over it now, actually, but back then when I had that game, unfortunately, I was definitely under the weather. I didn't want to delay the game any longer though because I had already actually moved it back a little bit. Because if I had played it when we were originally talking about playing it, I don't think I could have done commentary because I was just really down and out from being sick. But unfortunately, I would be lying if I said that that didn't affect my gameplay in that particular game. So that kind of stings a little bit. It's an unfortunate happenstance that I had to end up being sick. Right around the time that I needed to play semifinals. So I feel like that led to me playing not nearly as well as I could have played. Definitely not as good as I played in the first game with Anastasia. Although, that wasn't a perfect game either, obviously. Um, but yeah, I definitely think my playing was subpar in this game. But additionally, there were quite a few hacks against me in this game. There was a lot of para hacks, actually, specifically some misses as well on my side that really kind of hurt me. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that if not for all that, I would have won because I don't think I could. Don't think I can say that. Obviously, I think it definitely would have been a different game had I not been dealing with those issues. But unfortunately, like I said, it is what it is, and that is what it is at the end of the day. Um, but yeah, those are kind of the highlights and the lowlights of the season for the Philadelphia Pidgeys as I see them. Like I said, still a pretty successful season, very good season, um, and still pretty happy with as far as we were able to go. So, having said all that, we are going to now do some closing remarks for the season. So, um, I know I've stated it numerous times at this point, but overall, I would say that I was very happy with this season. Again, finishing the season with an 8-3 record, which is one of the best records that I've ever had in a draft league. That obviously is something that I am very proud of. That's something that I um, am very happy about. Like I said, given how poorly I did last season here in this draft league, I definitely feel like I accomplished my goal of redemption here. Again, making it all the way to the semifinals, technically making third place, having lost to the individual who ended up winning the whole thing. Um, So yeah, I am happy with all of that. Of course, it is bittersweet in a sense because I would have liked to go farther. Obviously, the goal is always to try and win. When you enter these things, and unfortunately, we didn't have quite enough in the tank to get that done. But despite that, I am still very happy with the performance that we had. I will say we had a lot of fun this season. We do have a great group of people in this draft league, and I do want to say a quick thank you and shout out to all of those people because they are nice people. They are strong competitive battlers, and definitely makes for a fun yet competitive environment here in the league. So yeah, it was a great season I think overall. Um, and yeah, I will say on the downside, on the flip side of that, this league seems to just be getting more and more and more competitive with each passing season. And so y'all will know what I'm talking about if you're in the league. It just seems like it is definitely getting brutal and it is getting hard to keep up, I will say, because the competition just keeps getting better. Like I said, not only do we keep making changes to the player base to have competitive individuals, but the people in the league just continuously up their game with each passing season. Drafting stronger teams, playing better, and yeah, it is just it's a wildly competitive league. So um, those are big takeaways for me as just it is interesting to watch the evolution of these players and how they are motivated to get better, and myself included, I will say, although I think there are a lot of other players that have made bigger strides in improving both their drafting and their playing than me. um, but yeah, it is just a very highly competitive environment, and you know, it's definitely not for the faint of heart. I will say that, but still a lot of fun. I am a competitor. I do enjoy competing, and yeah, I do find that enjoyable. Additionally, I will also say that I did have a good time being a commissioner this season. That's something that I'd be remiss if I didn't mention. Um, Collaborating with the other commissioners and the owner to create content for the channel, power rankings or preview videos or what have you, just analysis. I did enjoy that quite a lot, having the ability to do that more so this season. Um, so another thank you I will say to everyone on the commissioners team as well as the owner of the league. Of course, Scorpion and then Emerald Miner and Branded P, the other commissioners, for you know joining me to make some great content as well for the league this season. So yeah, it was a good time. I do enjoy doing things like that. Just doing analysis because I do consider myself to be a relatively unbiased individual, but I also strive for entertainment as well, as you guys will know. So I feel like the blend of those two things kind of come together to make it a good time for me to be in a position like that to do things like that. So um, but yeah, overall, like I said, very positive feelings about this season. As for what the future holds for me, for the channel, for the Philadelphia Pidgeys, I will say first and foremost, I think we're definitely going to be on a little bit of a break from Draft League at this point. Um, I know kind of the general feeling of everyone in the league, especially toward the end this season, was the term that I coined, draft league fatigue, or at least if I didn't coin it, I'm claiming to coin it. Um, but but yeah, I think we're all feeling that, and so I think there's definitely going to be a pretty sizable break between now and another potential league. I will tell you guys, I'm not 100% sure if I am going to join the next season of the league, depending on when it happens. Kind of on the fence about it at this point, simply because, while it is a lot of fun, it is also a lot of work in the sense of having to prepare so hard every week for every game that you play. Is definitely a very time consuming process. And you can't afford to slack, because if you do, then you get what happened to me in season two, which I'm totally not down for experiencing that again. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure I'm going to join the next season of the league. I might, or any other league for that matter. I might just be kind of taking a break from all that for the foreseeable future, but we'll kind of see what happens with that. Just have to see how I feel once the next season of this league rolls around. But additionally, I will also say I am going to be going back to making new original 6v6 Smugon singles teams here on the channel. Going to get back to a more casually competitive scene, which is certainly something that I find most enjoyable. I will say, as far as that goes, I do have a new team in the works for you guys. It will be coming out quite soon, actually. But I will also say I probably won't be cranking out Wi-Fi content quite as much as I had in the past, because we are getting to a point here in Scarlet and Violet where, as I had said, we kind of exhausted all of the new content. Like, there's not going to be, as far as I know, any more new content for Scarlet and Violet. And so what we have is what we have. And while there are quite a lot of Pokemon that I still want to use, that number is dwindling. And so I'm not sure how many more original six V6 teams that I have left in me here in Scarlet and Violet. But I am still going to go make as many as I can as I want to. But yeah, I probably won't be cranking the battles out quite as frequently as I was in the past, but there will still be new battles, new teams, new content on the horizon. So make sure to stay tuned for all that. So, but yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this one, guys. That's it for the BHDL3, and yeah, we're looking toward the future at this point. So. That's it. Thanks for watching again, everyone. Hope you all enjoyed. Please hit that like button, leave a comment, and or subscribe if you did enjoy, and stay tuned for more new videos in the future. So that's it, and we'll see you next time.